Grand Prix, the 75th running of this unique street race here in the southwest of France. I'm Chris Hartley, and this is the second event of the season for the FIA European Formula 3 Championship, the 7th round of the season about to get underway. 3 races this weekend, the third of which tomorrow afternoon will be the race that gives us the title of Pau Grand Prix winner 2016. And we have a very interesting mixture of different grids for all 3 races this weekend. Because it's been raining, it's been very, very wet here over the last couple of days, real downpours at times. It's pretty warm and humid, but in terms of the qualifying sessions, they've all been wet so far, and it's really mixed things up around the street circuit, especially for those drivers, lots of them new to the grid this season, who've not experienced a street race like this before. But it's Lance Stroll who's going to start this first race of the weekend on pole position, the Canadian who is second in the championship and looking for his second win of the season. There he is, Lance, who won the very first round of the year at Paul Ricard. Got one other podium, that was in the very wet race, interestingly, at the Hungaroring last time out at Budapest. So he obviously goes well in wet conditions. He was one of the drivers struggling with tyres around a very hot Budapest circuit at the Hungaroring a few weeks ago, but picked up good points in all 3 races despite only getting the one podium. And there's somebody else who I fancy is quite pleased that it's raining this weekend, Ben Barnicoat, because he won the very last race a few weeks ago at the Hungaroring in very similar wet conditions. Ben Barnicoat, the British driver, launched himself up to 7th place in the championship with his maiden win in his maiden season of F3 racing, having come up from Formula Renault. So he's going to be lining up second on the grid for this one. He's based on the times from the first qualifying session early yesterday afternoon. There was a separate qualifying session for this afternoon's race and also for the Pau GP tomorrow. Nick Cassidy, good to see Nick back on form. Not that he ever really lost form, but he really struggled with tyres at the Hungaroring, perhaps more than anybody else, with the tyres just really struggling, losing grip and dropping off a cliff in the heat. So despite qualifying well at the Hungaroring and being the championship leader after the first event of the season at Paul Ricard, he really did struggle and dropped up to 4th place in the standings. Max Gunther is the championship leader. He's had 2 wins so far this season, but he's also had 2 retirements, one at each of the events at Paul Ricard and Hungaroring. He's certainly the best qualifier of the season so far on average, but he's got to make this one count, Max Gunther, because the championship leader crashed out of qualifying 2 yesterday afternoon when he was going very quickly. He crashed out at the Fosse chicane, and he's going to be at the back of the grid for this afternoon's race and tomorrow's race. So he's really got to make this one count. Callum Ilott, who was absolutely sublime in the wet conditions at the Hungaroring a few weeks ago, and I'm sure has been pretty pleased with the way it's gone here so far in his second season of Formula 3 racing, and he's high up the grid for all 3 races this weekend. Callum with some exceptional car control at the Hungaroring and a real determination. Now, George Russell, there he is going to be lining up 6th on the grid. He was going for the victory in the final race of the weekend at the Hungaroring, up against Max Gunther. A great race was in prospect. The 2 of them came together, and George was subsequently penalised for his involvement in that by the stewards. They took a dim view of it. There was certainly a lot of controversy as to whose fault it was in that incident, but unfortunately George has had to drop 3 places on the grid, so he did qualify 3rd, but will start the race 6th on the grid. Arjun Maidi with a good qualifying position as well, somebody else that really struggled with the car and with tyres and with setup at the Hungaroring, but the young Indian driver who went well around this circuit last year is going to be 7th on the grid for this one. Sergio Sete Camara is one to watch this weekend. The Brazilian really has started to step up his game this season. He's with the very successful Motor Park team, the German team, and he's backed by Red Bull. They have their eye on him for a future perhaps higher up the Formula 1 and single-seater ladder, and he is going to be on the front row of the grid for the Pau GP tomorrow. Mikkel Jensen has also qualified well for the main race tomorrow. All 3 rounds count towards the championship in the normal way in terms of the points. They're all equal in that respect, but it's tomorrow's 3rd race that will determine who is the Pau GP winner, and Mikkel Jensen's going to be in the top 6 on the grid for that one. The Danish driver also back for his 2nd season of racing. He's had a bit of a mixed season so far, but certainly when the going is good, he's very quick, Mikkel Jensen, so we'll watch out for him. Ryan Vetter there, the American driver, somebody who races with the Carlin Motorsport team, hugely successful, the most successful team in British Formula 3, and also running various international projects, including Indy Lights, in which another Formula 3 racer, an ex-Formula 3 racer, Ed Jones, who used to race with them in this championship a few years ago, has been doing rather well and has already won a race this weekend. So That is the grid now being cleared. It's not actually raining at the moment. As I say, it's roughly about every hour we seem to get a real downpour though, but it's not continuous rain. But when it does rain, it has been very heavy. At one point yesterday afternoon, I had to stop the sessions out on track, so heavy was the rain, and just teeming down the windows and flooding the streets. So not exactly southern French weather that you might come to expect. There's a look at the point standings then. Max Gunther for the all-dominant Prema Power team. He's leading the standings by 4 points from his teammate Lance Stroll, but Lance with certainly better grids this weekend. Joel Eriksson, the rookie for Motor Park team, this week going really well. 58 points, third place in the championship, and he's the top rookie. Nick Cassidy fourth. Ralph Aron, another very quick rookie, in fifth place, and it might have been higher had he not crashed out on the formation lap in the wet at the Hungaroring. After a really good run, Ralph Aron, where he finished first and second in the first two races of the weekend. He's certainly impressed, but Ralph, who was only kart racing 2 years ago, won the Italian Formula 4 Championship last year. The Estonian, of course, this is his first time here around the streets of Po, and this is a very, very different kettle of fish for these young drivers to deal with. It's a welcome to the grid as well for a new driver, David Beckman, who was signed up at the start of the year, but has only just reached his 16th birthday, so he wasn't old enough to compete in the first two rounds of the season. Had similar, I think, a couple of years ago with Santino Ferrucci, who had to miss the first few rounds of the season until he reached his 16th birthday. But David Beckman, the German driver, joins Mikkel Jensen in the Muka Motorsport team, a team which very successful in this category. The Berlin-based squad also running a couple of cars in the DTM Championship, amongst other things, this year. So there is the grid. The race distance, one lap for all three races this weekend, and a chance now for the drivers to refresh the memories as to exactly where they might be able to find grip. There are going to be some unusual lines, I'm sure. It's a street circuit, of course, don't forget, so lots of painted white lines on the track because these are normally roads. It's bumpy, there are curbs, there's a very undulating circuit as well, so the water is going to gather in some unusual places, and it's up to the drivers now to try and figure this out. But of course they have at least had some feel of it in the qualifying sessions. There's Harrison Newey, another newcomer to the championship, number 21 Van Amersfoort team. Went very well indeed in the first round at Paul Ricard, already got into the points. But had a chat with him yesterday, and he said what the team boss, Fritz Van Amersfoort, had said to me at the time, that the team as a whole kind of struggled with the setup at the Hungaroring, certainly in dry conditions. So Harrison didn't quite do so well in round two, but he's really loving driving around this circuit, he was telling me, but difficult to find the limit. He said you feel like you're on the limit, and then they give you your times and tell you need to find another 4 or 5 tenths of a second. So he'll find it easier, I'm sure, in the race. One point to note is that here at Po, you try and keep things safe because this is incredibly narrow. As Fritz Van Amersfoort, team boss of VAR, said to me yesterday, Monaco, compared to this, is like a motorway because it's so much wider. This is an incredibly narrow circuit. So to try and discourage pile-ups on the first few corners, you're not allowed to overtake until you get up the hill, up to turn 2 at Pont Oscar, going under the bridge. So, as you can see, it doesn't look like there's loads of surface water at the moment, but no doubt it will be incredibly greasy out there. Hugely famous event this, which stems its roots back all the way back to 1930, when the French Grand Prix was held here. When Grand Prix were held before the official Formula 1 World Championship started in 1950. And in the past, Formula 1 has raced here, Formula 2, Formula 3000. World Touring cars have even raced here. But it has for a while now been the home of Formula 3 since 2014, the FIA F3 European Championship has been coming here. Past winners of this event include some Formula 1 greats. Juan Manuel Fangio, the 5 times world champion, was a winner at Po in 1949 and 1950. Jim Clark, the double Formula 1 world champion, a 3 times winner in the 1960s. Jochen Rindt, who won the Formula 1 World Championship posthumously, was hugely successful here, 3 times winner as well. Lewis Hamilton won here in 2005. Romain Grosjean, Sebastian Loeb won here, albeit in a support race in a Porsche Carrera Cup a few years ago as well. So this is a fantastic event, a fantastic experience for these young drivers, but no doubt about it, an incredibly tough race. The 7th race of the 2016 season is about to get underway here at Po. The red lights come on pole position. Lance Stroll struggles off the line And Ben Barnicot gets rocketing into the lead of the race here. Could he be on for win number 2? Don't whisper it because it's very, very early days yet, but that's a perfect start for him. And Lance Stroll really struggling off the line, I'm afraid. Max Gunther's had a good start and got himself into second place from that outside row. They go through Lagarde Railway behind that corner. And look at the spray now that they all get going. They climb up the hill. Now they go under the Pont Oscar through the bridge, and now they're allowed to start overtaking one another. So this is going to be a really lively race, but so far so good. They're all behaving. Rather fewer cars than we had on the grid last year, which in many respects is a good thing. The quality is certainly very much up there. Big slide there for Nikita Mazepin, the Russian driver in one of the high-tech Grand Prix cars. Teammates, or one of the teammates to George Russell and to Ben Barnicot. But yeah, this is going to be a real stiff test for them. Got another race in a few hours' time this afternoon, so the teams will be hoping that they're going to look after the cars here for this one. And of course the big one tomorrow. Working their way through the chicane here and running through. You can see the curbs, which are not certainly not designed as race curbs here. 362 days of the year. This is the normal street circuit, but a great start for Ben Barnicot, who hooked that one up really well indeed. He was the driver running in third place at the Hungaroring when Max Gunther and George Russell came together, and fourth, Callum Ilott in fifth, Jensen sixth. So they've kind of held the station there. Twitter in seventh, Seti Kamara eighth, and Lance Stroll across the sector being in ninth place. So he got it underway, but the car really did bog down for whatever reason. So through lap 2, already look at the lead that Ben Barnicot has got. 2.8 seconds clear. He was at the end of the first lap of the race. And you can see the painted lines and pedestrian crossings, all things that are going to get very, very slippery once we get rain on them. But this is the perfect start for Ben Barnicot here. He's going to try and make this one work for him. He's got a good grid position for the Pau Grand Prix race. Grid's quite as high as he is now. Alessio Larandi for Carlin is the driver that's going to be on pole for Sunday's race. But Barnicot is just romping away at this stage of the race. And who's to say he wasn't going to be a challenger for the race at the Hungaroring anyway? I know Russell and Gunther came together and he wasn't quite with them, but he was so smooth in the wet conditions, almost the opposite driving style to some of the others out there who are really throwing it around. He was on a pair of rails, and that would have, I think, given him good cause to be very quick at the end of the race, and he certainly beat everybody else by a long way. Everybody in the mid-pack, of course, has got all the spray to try and deal with here, trying to cope with this real lack of visibility that they're going to have. Gunther second is about half a second or so clear of Nick Cassidy in third place. George Russell just 1 or 2 car lengths behind them, running in fourth position. Ilott and Jensen, so no change in the top 6. Tevita, Kamara, Stroll and Alessio Larandi rounding out the top 10 as it stands. The gap between the top 2 grows on that lap by a little bit more. 3.6 seconds now, the difference between them. There then is the number 17 machine. As I say, these next 2 races this afternoon and tomorrow, because it being a street circuit and it being narrow, overtaking opportunities are at a real premium. The run into the first corner at Lagarde is probably the best opportunity, but there aren't too many others around the course of the 2.76 kilometre lap here at Pau. So Gunther is, as you can see, just ahead of his teammate Nick Cassidy, New Zealander, who's also a Super GT driver over in Japan, splits his time between Formula 3 and Super GT. He's going to miss, I think, the next round at Spielberg because of a clash. He's also been busy doing that, and has been a Japanese Formula 3 champion in the past as well. Toyota Racing Series champion on the podium at Macau a couple of years ago, Nick Cassidy. So he's very quick around the streets, and the New Zealander is certainly looking slightly quicker than his teammate at the moment, but trying to find a way through. As I say, it's not going to be all that easy, and a bit of a slide there, a bit of a drift coming out of the corner for Gunther with the yellow helmet on there. Nick Cassidy with the more red, white and blue helmet. Looks smoother, doesn't he, coming out of the corners. He's able to get the power and the traction down a little bit better. He's going to have a go here at drawing alongside his teammate, but the door will close and Max Gunther will hang on to second place for the time being. And I think when this battle starts to intensify, that's going to bring George Russell into it, because he's not very far behind. And there's going to be three of them together anytime soon. Big gap back then to Callum Ilott, who is in 5th place. He's about nearly 3 seconds behind them in 5th position. Mikkel Jensen still running in 6th place. Then we have Kamara, Stroll, Lorandi still in the top 10. Guan Yu Zhu is in 11th place. The rookie who's seriously impressed us this year. Qualified 11th on the grid for this one. Again, a big tall order for those drivers that have come into the season as rookies and have not experienced the streets of Po before. One driver who's new to Formula 3 but has raced here in other classes before is Antoine Hubert, who's currently running in 14th, Ralph Aron. And in 15th place currently, we've got Nikita Mazepin. Harrison Newey is 16th, Pedro Piquet 17th, David Beckman, the newcomer, in 18th place, Saikong Li, Peter Lee, 19th. And another point to note is that Nico Carey, the very quick Finnish rookie, had to start this race from the pit lane. He's already picked up a couple of places. That was after a post-race incident on track between him and Pedro Piquet. It was coming together after the checkered flag happened, so he had to start this race from the pit lane. And he's only made up 2 places so far. He's in 19th place. He's just got past Peter Lee. Arjun Maini, as I haven't talked about him yet since the start of the race, but he has had a severe problem somewhere, because he, having started 7th, is running down in last place in 21st position. Another driver that has a grid penalty, but is looking quick here this weekend, is the aforementioned Antoine Hubert. He had to change his engine at the last round, and the rule is if it's deemed to be a standard engine change, a change for performance reasons, then you have to get a 10-place grid penalty for the next 3 races. That rule has changed slightly if there are other issues that cause you to change your engine. For an example, an accident damages the engine, then that rule doesn't necessarily apply. But for what's deemed a standard engine change because of an engine problem, you have to drop 10 places on the grid for the next 3 races. So he changed it after the first race at Hungaroring. Races 2 and 3 took the penalty, and this first race he'll take a penalty. But after this race, he will not be penalised by that anymore. So a real stiff penalty. The idea of that, of course, is to stop teams just putting new engines in all the time, and the budget's becoming ridiculous. So the idea is to try and curb costs, but of course the driver does get severely penalised, and in some cases penalised more than drivers who have perhaps had altercations out on the circuit or even off the circuit. So Ben Barnicoat extending his lead all the time. Fastest lap on 24.6. A replay of the start. Look to the right of the picture. Lance Stroll, get the car just stalled on the line. He fired it up pretty quickly, got going again. And, well, 9th place from pole position. That'll be hugely frustrating. Here's a view from the rear of the grid. And everybody did well to miss him, didn't they? Nick Cassidy was right behind him, of course. Callum Ilott would have not seen that at all. He'd have just been looking at the back of Cassidy's car. So they did well to avoid him. And then, there's a slip and a slide for Nikita Mazepin. That's coming out of Lagar. When I watched qualifying down there yesterday and saw 3 or maybe 4 drivers just locking up and going straight on down the escape road. So it is the corner where you carry a lot of speed, and coming out of that corner, it's an uphill rise as you climb up towards Pont Oscar, but certainly lots of cars were getting wheel spin coming out of that turn. See just how wet it is on the camera there, coming into turn 2, the left-hander. That's at the end of the Boulevard de Périgny, through Pont Oscar and up to Lisi Bartow now. This tight right-hand corner, almost a hairpin. And then the circuit really does open up and goes around a park now. The corner itself, the next corner is called Parc Beaumont, and there's a park right in the middle of the course, which last year, which was much, much sunnier, very, very hot, was absolutely packed during the course of the weekend, with families enjoying picnics and watching race cars whiz past the park and the playground just 50 metres or so behind them. So it's a really beautiful setting here. It's a lovely old town, Po, and a fabulous street course. There is Pedro Piquet, who is in the blue and white machine. A near replica of the Brabham colour scheme, which his father, Nelson Piquet, won the World Championship, 3 times World Champion Nelson Piquet. Pedro racing in Formula 3, European Formula 3 for the first time. He's been a Brazilian Formula 3 champion. and his half-brother, Nelson Piquet Jr., ex-Formula One racer, current Formula E champion, the inaugural Formula E champion. There was talk that he might be racing this weekend. Indeed, he wanted to come a race with Carlin, but that was ruled out in the end. So he's not here after all. But we have got Ron Piquet on the grid. Sure, he's got very learning a for these rookies. Stemmed off the pressure now that's been coming from Nick Cassidy. It's just set the fastest first sector of anybody in the race so far. So he's actually 0.3 of a second quicker than Ben Barnicoat. Still plenty of spray, but I'm sure the track will change, and it's not going to dry up, but it's going to get less wet, and the drivers will be able to push those tyres. Hankook tyres just a little bit more into the corners, brake a little bit harder, get on the accelerator a little bit earlier. As we watch Callum Ilott there, the Van Amersfoort Racing driver, car number 5, who certainly had some good runs in his first season last year, but switched teams. He was with Carlin, with Trevor Carlin's team last year, switched across to the Dutch team, Van Amersfoort Racing, and seems very much at home there. Former European karting champion, who came straight from karts to Formula 3 last season. A replay of him there, getting a little bit airborne over the curbs, which are a quicker route through the corners, but you have to be careful because they are treacherous in these conditions. Just to keep an eye, yes, a fastest lap, personal best lap for Max Gunther in second place, 1:23.9. So overall, he was 0.4 quicker than the race leader, Ben Barnicoat, last time around. Nick Cassidy also had a personal best in third place. So too did George Russell in fourth place. The only one in the top 4 that didn't go quicker than he had previously was the race leader, Ben Barnicoat, who is also by a long, long way the top rookie in this race. He is first, of course. The next best rookie is Guan Yu Zhu, who is 11th, and then Antoine Hubert, who is currently in 12th place, the French driver. Now, yellow flags, and did I see the safety car board in the back? Lost it, and is pointing the wrong way. So the cars will now, yeah, safety car board is out, so no notification on the screen. That comes on the screen now. And a roof run into the barrier, a wheel missing. That's Piquet, isn't it? I think that's just talking about him. Has pinched the barrier there, and that's the left rear clean off. The car pointing in the wrong direction. Luckily, nobody was too close to him. But of course, there's no runoff areas, no gravel traps here. So if a car circuit and the safety car is deployed for the first time this weekend, which is an absolute killer for Ben Barnicoat, who had got a 5.5 second lead, and might be just slightly worried about the fact that Max Gunther was a little bit quicker than him on that last complete lap before the safety car was brought out. So they'll make their way down towards the goal. They can see the makeshift pit lane here, surrounded by apartments. They get a great view of the racing from those apartments, the people that live there. And it's down in a valley as well. The town itself is up. You have to go up about 7 or 8 flights of stairs to get up there. So up at the park level, it's a real undulating course. Up this hill is a pretty huge climb. And they can just see to the top left of the corner. They can see the people watching from up in the town. They get a great view down over the course there. And if you take a stroll out, there's a casino here as well, which gives it a real Monte Carlo feel, which the cars run around before they go into the park section. Absolutely packed here last year. The crowd might be, I guess, down a little bit this year, given the weather's not exactly ideal. But you can see plenty of umbrellas there in the grandstand on the infields of Le Gard. That's where I was watching qualifying from yesterday. So, safety car will be out for a little while that car is cleared up. Ben Barnicoat leads. Max Gunther, the points leader, in second place. Nick Cassidy in third position. George Russell fourth. Callum Ilott in fifth place. Mikkel Jensen in sixth position. Seventh is Ryan Tevita. In 8th place, Sergio Cedric Camara. That Stroll, after his pad start, is in 9th place. And, my apologies, it's not Piquet. It's Peter Lee's car. Now we get a closer view of it from the static camera right on the barrier there. So, yes, Piquet is still running. He's down in 17th, but still running. And it's Peter Lee's car that has not come through. It's hard to tell with all the cameras getting a little bit misted up here. Peter Lee Chinese driver in his second season with F3, into the barriers. There's number 14, Arjun Riley. Engines, most of the engines of these Formula 3 cars are either Mercedes or Volkswagen, but 3Bond's engine in the T-Sport car, prepared by very well-respected engine specialist Neil Brown Engineering in the UK. Okay, so starting to build up the speed. The safety car light's already out, so green flag is going to come out. Ben Barnicoat knows it, backs them up, and then squirts the accelerator to give himself some breathing space. And Nick Cassidy's going for second place here. I think he might have done it around the outside. What a move that was. So Cassidy, number 2, look, has got in front of his teammate before they even get to Lagarde, and that was a well-timed move. So Max Gunther down to 3rd place. And Max had, up until the safety car, kind of just about started to edge away a little bit from Nick Cassidy, but the roles have now been well and truly reversed. Now Nick Cassidy will not want Ben Barnicoat to get too far down the road here. For tomorrow's Pau GP, Nick is going to be on the 2nd row of the grid. It'll be Larandi, Kamara, Stroll, Cassidy, Eilert and Jensen, the top 6 on the grid for the feature race, if you like, tomorrow. So there Max Gunther down to 3rd place. How much water is on the static cameras here as they whip their way around Park Beaumont, some of the fastest corners through the Fosse chicane. This is where Max Gunther crashed yesterday in 2nd qualifying. And then a real steep downhill section now, down to Poimiro. This right-hander through the next chicane to follow, all the way down through there. So through these downhill sections, of course, all the weight is over the front wheels of the car, and there's not much weight over the back wheels of the car, so it's very easy for the back of the car to step out of shape, particularly through that chicane. Still running downhill here, and then back out onto the start-finish straights, back down towards Lagarde. So 16 minutes left on the clock, and here's a replay. This was a super bit of driving from Nick Cassidy. Look at that, around the outside, almost glancing the barriers there, and a really gutsy move that from Nick. Max, to be fair to him, gave his teammate room, but he probably wasn't expecting the attack to come there. He was probably waiting for the attack to come down at the first corner. So real opportunism there for Nick Cassidy, and having done all of that, he's now started to pull away from his teammate and attacking the race leader, Ben Barnicoat. There is Max Gunther down to 3rd place, and the driver coming after him is George Russell in his 2nd season of racing. George currently only 11th in the championship, but that is no reflection of just how well George has been driving this year. So they could have won the race potentially at the Hungaroring in race 3, where there was the coming together with Max Gunther. He'd gone for the move, and then Gunther went off in the barriers when there was contact, and George carried on for a corner or so until he realised he'd got suspension damage and had to retire the car. He led the first race at the Hungaroring and was off like a rocket ship to start with in the very hot conditions, race 1 at Budapest, but then the tyres just dropped off a cliff and he was losing 2-3 seconds a lap. He did very well to stay in the points as long as he did, and eventually had to retire the car with serious tyre degradation, which I think was not everybody was getting this, so it's not like everybody had it, but certain drivers really did struggle, even within Prema, for example, where they know the setup. Some of the cars were going well and challenging for wins and podiums. Nick Cassidy's car was absolutely nowhere all weekend in dry conditions. And certainly High Tech was saying that the car had been fine, then we got to the first race and it all changed again. I think it was a combination of the resurfacing of the circuit, the intense heat that we had at the Hungaroring, very high track temperatures there, and also the fact that they were running with the World Touring Car Championship and different types of rubber being laid down than that perhaps have been used to at other events like DTM, where most of the championships that run are running on Hankook rubber. So it really did throw the settings for some people. George Russell and Nick Cassidy were two that probably came off worse that weekend. So George will be attacking here. He's going to be on pole position for this afternoon's race, George Russell, and that's his maiden pole position as well. But he and Alessio Lorandi have taken maiden pole positions this weekend. George thought he got his maiden pole position at the Hungaroring, but was one of, I was going to say several drivers, but nearly every driver had their best lap times taken away from them for exceeding track limits in the qualifying sessions. In fact, several drivers had several laps taken away from them. But the decisions, because there were so many of them, didn't come out until later. Right, Pedro Piquet, it is him this time, and he is in the barrier, but I think he's going to get going again, isn't he? Minus the front wing. Come on, Pedro, fire it up. Can you get that going again? Yep, he's going to carry on. Shakes his head, but he will carry on. So he's victim of the wet conditions and the barriers this time around. But just to go back to the Hungaroring, yeah, George Russell thought he got in pole position, but it was only quite a long time, it was 40 minutes or so after the session ended that penalties were handed out, and he had his fastest lap taken away and ended up second fastest. But this time it's for real, and pole position for him and the new Hi-Tech GP team, which are already race winners in their first full season in Formula 3, with Ben Barnicoat, who won the last race at the Hungaroring, and he's winning this one currently. There he is, number 24, backed by the Racing Steps Foundation, who really do invest heavily. It's a non-profit making organisation that invests in young British racing drivers who might not otherwise have been able to find the backing or the sponsorship or the money to get to international competition. They ran Jake Dennis in the championship last year. Jake, who was really unlucky not to win the Pau GP, having dominated the whole weekend, leading most of the Pau GP, and then had a breakage on the suspension and failed to win after really being the man all weekend long. Real heartbreak for him. His name won't be on the list, but we'll always remember the way he drove at that one. It was Antonio Giovinazzi who went on to win the race last year in his place, driver that was running in second place. Now, Max Gunther has just set the fastest first sector of anybody that time around, but he's got work to do because he's quite a long way back from these two, as you can see. The gap's only 1 second between them. Last time around, Cassidy just over 2/10 quicker than Barnicoat. A bit quicker than both of them last time around was Max Gunther, but he is over 3 seconds behind them. George Russell, he's only 0.8 of a second behind him in 4th place. Callum Ilott in 5th place. Mikkel Jensen in 6th position still. And I would guess that's Pedro Piquet, isn't it? With a new front wing and a new nose going back out of the pits, having run into the barriers. So still 20 cars running of the 21 that started. Peter Lee is out, but otherwise everybody's still running. And no real changes down the order. It's even tougher to overtake around a street course in wet conditions where you can't really see where you're going with all the spray that's been thrown up, which is a real issue through the final chicane. Smooth as you like once again. It's been a better lap this for Ben Barnicoat. He certainly seems to have pulled back away, doesn't he, from Nick Cassidy. Personal best second sector, and it's going to be a good third sector, I think, as well for Ben Barnicoat. The gap grows to 1.4 seconds. Respond to the pressure, isn't it? It's not the fastest lap of the race, but it's his fastest lap. Callum Ilott has the best lap of the race, by the way, 1 minute 23.790 seconds. There are some of those steep stairs you have to climb to get back up into the town from the paddock which is muddy at the moment with all the rain that we've had interspersed with some real sunshine and real hot conditions. So Barnicoat edging away. George Russell has just done his personal best. So the gap from 3rd to 4th is getting ever closer here, and George Russell wants to win this championship this year, make no bounds about it. He's got some ground to catch up. He's got a long way still to be able to do that. It's a 30 race series. This is only the 7th race of the season, but he has got 27 points, and the championship leader Max Gunther has got 70 points, so you won't want that gap to get any bigger this weekend. And if there's a chance of a podium, I'm sure he'll go for it. Oh, it's being spun around is Arjun Maini. Got a real clout from behind there, I'm afraid, didn't he? And that sent him around into the spin. Okay, carrying the driver involved in that, the one that started from the pit lane. Red Bull backing. So Arjun's race goes from bad to worse, I'm afraid, after a good qualifying session yesterday. I say he was a driver that went well at this event last year, Arjun Maini, in his first season. He had some sparkling weekends, and this certainly was one of them. He got one of the points in the first race in European Formula 3. But it's going to be tough to replicate that after qualifying didn't quite go according to plan for him. So this is the battle for 3rd place I've been telling you about. We got 8.5 minutes to go for George Russell to try and find a way past the championship leader Max Gunther. The last time these two were running nose to tail in wet conditions, they came together at the Hungaroring. Potential race victories. So That might be in the back of their minds, and it might be something that holds them back, or it might just be something that spurs them on. Known racing drivers, it'll probably be the latter. So Russell pushing on, not that far behind them. You can just see him in the distance is Callum Ilott, whose lap times are, comparable. He's lapping just as quickly as these two. He's not really closing the gap. If they're starting to get into a fight, Callum could get involved. And given the... I reckon if he gets half a chance. But it's going to be a real tough test, as I say, to get past somebody who's on a similar pace to you around this street circuit. It dates its way all the way back to the beginning of the very last century, the Pau GP, as an event around the town itself. 1930, as I say, was the first running of it, but back in the early 1900s there was a cross France race which started and ended in Pau. It was really the ancestor to this event, running around the streets. And until 1930 for it to happen, it didn't run over. This weekend, we will all have an eye on getting their names on that very list, that very long list of famous names that have won in the past. Of course, title and future careers. Several of the drivers out there by Formula One, by Martini Williams Young Driver Development Programme, Lance Stroll second in the championship, and then Nico Carey and Sergio Sette Camara by Red Bull. So they know this is a place where young talent is going to be coming from, and I'm absolutely convinced that there'll be several of these names that you'll be talking about as real pro racing drivers in the future, whether that is Formula One or other forms of motorsport. Who knows? It's very tough to get to the top of Formula One. Even if you're the best driver in the world, there are other commercial factors that can stop you getting there. But we've already had several successful names. Most recently, of course, Max Verstappen, who went straight from this championship into Formula One, making his debut with the main Red Bull team this weekend, having had a season and a half with Toro Rosso. So we'll see how he gets on. I think it'll probably be quite well, given what he's done so far. So there's Nick Cassidy, who, after getting into second place in the first few laps of the restart, really did start to push Ben Barnicoat, but Ben responded very well. Having said all of that, a personal best last time around for Cassidy, and the New Zealander a tenth quicker than the race leader last time around. But a tenth is, well, it needs to be quicker than that, because it's 1.6 seconds the gap that he's trying to close. Taking the arc through the corners there. As I said, most race circuits, you can really take wide lines into the corners in wet conditions to try and find the grip, which is often not on the main racing line that's used in the dry. Of course, you're quite limited here as to how much you can do that, because if you go too wide, there's a metal barrier in the way. As somebody quite smartly pointed out, when all the track limits penalties were being dished out at the Hungaro ring a few weeks ago, there probably won't be too many track limits penalties here at Pau, because if you exceed the track limits at Pau, you're in the barrier with a smashed car. So 19 laps complete, 1.7 seconds. The gap grows slightly on that lap too. That man, Nick Cassidy, number 2, currently 4th in the championship, looking for his first win. Always been very competitive, has had guest drives in the past in Formula 3. Started the season with 3 straight second-place finishes at Paul Ricard, which was why he was the championship leader after the first weekend of the season. Led much of one of those races until a rain-affected race just caught him out and he had a moment. Dropped to 3rd and then got Guan Yu Zhou back. Snatched back 2nd place, but he'll be desperate to get a race win here. But Ben Barnicoat does not look like somebody who is, by his own admission, still getting used to Formula 3 cars, does he? And he's just driving beautifully at the moment. He loves, clearly, the wet conditions, and that smooth style is really paying dividends in these types of conditions where it's all about car control and not really. We've had 6 race winners, so he is potentially going to become the first driver of the year to win more than 1 race. Certainly the first driver to win back-to-back races. and the gap's growing again, so it's 2.2 seconds clear now, Max Gunther. The gap from Gunther to George Russell, having got down to half a second at one point, that's grown again to 1.2 seconds. And you wonder if it's a case of the driver behind, just as soon as they get too close to the car in front, they just can't see where they're going, and it's really causing them problems. So tough here, but Nick will, I think, be pretty happy with second place. And now we're going to get a replay, if we can see what it is, of, I think, somebody clipping the barriers. That's one of the Motor Park Red Bull liveried cars, and that's Callum Ilott up against, or lapping, the number 10 car of Nico Carey, by the looks of things, who started from the pit lane and has not really made the progress that he would have liked. Fastest first sector of anybody in the race has just gone to Nick Cassidy, but we're running out of time, as you can see on the clock. 2 minutes 25 seconds left to run. Gap's 2.2 seconds, and even if he can close the gap to Ben Barnicoat, he's got to find a way through. Still tough this though for Ben. He's the one out there with the best visibility, but he's also the one with the most pressure on him, and you've just got to stay calm in these situations and utterly keep concentrating, which can get difficult when you're leading a race. You feel like you can maybe just start to ease up a bit, but the moment you do that, the moment you start braking earlier, turning in and getting out of your rhythm at different positions, then that's when you can make silly mistakes, even if you're driving a little bit slower. Equally, he doesn't need to push massively hard, does he? Just keeps doing what he's doing. 2.3 seconds the gap, with a few minutes left to go in the race. Working against the wheel there, Nick Cassidy, you can see, doing some lock on to try and control the slide, which he does beautifully. And these two are 3 seconds clear of Max Gunther in third place now. Well, it's going to be a bittersweet weekend this for Max, because he's got this real uphill battle, as I say, having crashed out of Q2, which sets the grid for race 2 and race 3. He's going to start at the back for those, and so he would have liked to have won this one. He'd be fairly happy with a podium. Second place, of course, would have been better, but he knows that in terms of points, these might be the only points he scores this weekend. It's not impossible for him to get into the points in the other races, but even if he gets another single point this weekend, it's going to be a real achievement just to do that. Lance Stroll, who had that problem on the start, is still 9th, so somebody else is going to be disappointed. He's been very consistent. He's just had one retirement this season, which was not of his doing. He caught up in somebody else's accident. Several drivers coming off in the second race at Paul Ricard. And other than that, just driven very smoothly, picked up points all the way. But there aren't any drivers in the top 5 in the championship who've not had at least one retirement. So it's very open indeed, this championship still. And consistency is going to be absolutely critical. And that's something that Ben Barnicoat seems very much to have found now. 4th place and top rookie in his first race in Formula 3, the European Championship at Paul Ricard. Then he's picked up points finishes at the Hungaroring, and that win, of course, which really propelled him back up the championship. So Ben Barnicoat controlling things from the front of the field, looking like a Formula 3 veteran. Nick Cassidy is the only one that's really been able to match him. Max Gunther and George Russell not too far behind in 3rd and 4th positions. Callum Ilott's had a fairly lonely race. You can see the two ahead, but he can't quite get involved in their battle. And we haven't really seen Mikkel Jensen, but Mikkel is having a good race. The Danish driver has been 6th all the way through this, and looking for some good championship points. He's 10th in the championship at the moment. He's had a couple of 4th place finishes, but this will be one of his better results of the season. So the time has ticked down, and that means we get one more lap added on at the end of the race. One more lap for Ben Barnicoat to hang on to this, to get a 2nd race victory of the season. He's 2nd on the bounce to become the first driver of the season to win 2 races in this super competitive championship. Under Pont Oscar, underneath the bridge he goes through this left-hander, still climbing uphill. Such a steep climb it is, and he's got just over 2 kilometres to go in this race now before he sees the checkered flag. The gap has come down, you can see that visually on the timing screen. It's gone down to 1.8 seconds, but this, I think, is Ben just bringing it home now, making sure he doesn't do anything silly on the final lap of the race, because I tell you what, you can have a race that is 99.9% perfect, but if you make one error of judgment on one corner of this lap, of this race, then you'll be in the barriers. So he's got to bring it home. He's got to be 100% here at Pau to get the result, not 99.9%. Ben is looking more than capable here. Down the hill into the chicane for the final time, staying well clear of the curves, which they'll thud over in dry conditions if we ever get them. We might do on Sunday, but for now it's wet racing, and one man that loves the wet in the championship. Back-to-back wins from the man from Great Britain. Takes a... There's Ollie Oakes, whose new high-tech GP team celebrate their second win of the as well, and that was a beautiful drive from Ben Barnicoat. Of course, Lance Stroll from pole position, having the problem on the line which dropped him back. That opened up the gates for Ben Barnicoat and Max Gunther in particular. Nick Cassidy did in that race in second place. Wasn't a great deal of overtaking in the race, but the one pass that we did get was fantastic, and that was from Nick Cassidy just after the restart to get around his teammate Max Gunther. So it's Ben Barnicoat that wins the race. Nick Cassidy 2.4 seconds behind him in second place. Max Gunther comes home in third position, the championship leader, and will extend his championship lead, funnily enough, at least today, because Lance Stroll, only a couple of points for him. He's second in the championship. Joel Eriksson third in the championship, no points. And Nick Cassidy is, with 20 points, I think, yes, going to move back, I reckon, into second place in the championship, back ahead of Ericsson and Stroll. So Ben Barnicoat the winner, Nick Cassidy second, Max Gunther third, George Russell fourth, Callum Ilott fifth, Mikkel Jensen in sixth place, Ryan Tavita with another good drive in seventh, Sergio Sette Camara in eighth, Lance Stroll ninth, and Alessio Lorandi, the last of the points finishers, in 10th place. The man, of course, that will start tomorrow's race on pole position, punching the air, clenching his fist. The driver, the team have put all the work in as well. Celebrate. 1/3 of the job is done. 2 more races still to come this weekend. 11th place went to Guan Yu Zhu. Didn't really see him, but more solid point. Well, not solid points in terms of the main championship, but more solid points in the rookie standings for Guan Yu Zhu, who's the second best rookie. So he'll be on the rookie podium. And Antoine Huber, who'll be one to watch later in the weekend, now that he's got rid of his engine penalties, is the driver third in the rookie standings to come home in 12th place overall. There you can see on your screens the top 10 positions. Those are the drivers that will score points for the main championship. 25 going the way of Ben Barnicoat, who again is going to move up the championship ladder with Guan Yu Zhu, Ralph Aron, the 2 drivers ahead of him, failing to score points in this one. Ben is going to move up to at least 5th place in the standings. So there's the rest of the runners. Just the one non-finisher, Peter Lee. Pedro Piquet went in the barriers, got out of the barriers and replaced the nose, had a pit stop, but at least finished the race and got some more running in the car. So they head back in towards the paddock area and Parc Fermé. The drivers will be going up on the podium. We'll have the main podium and also the rookie podium here in a few minutes' time. So it's a win for the British driver, Ben Barnicoat, Nick Cassidy from New Zealand second, and the German driver, Max Gunther, coming home in third place. But you can almost guarantee with Formula 3 racing, and particularly with the way that is coming on. So there is another race to come this afternoon, and tomorrow's race, late morning. So he's delighted. Can't really see his face, but you can see from the twinkle in his eyes, can't you, just how... For a rookie to win 2 wins out of his first 7 attempts, both of them in the wet, that's great stuff. I'm going to get some highlights now of the race. Of course, the start was the big one there. Lance Stroll's car struggling on the line now. Arjun Maini, while we're watching that, was the other one that struggled off the line, so that was what happened to Arjun. He dropped back towards the back of the field, having qualified on the 4th row of the grid. So it was Ben Barnicoat that got the lead of the race. Max Gunther and Nick Cassidy settled in behind him. George Russell had a decent start to get 4th place as you watch them filter their way through the first couple of corners of the lap. Not too much spray over on this side of the circuit. There was an illustration of what happens if you get on the curbs too much, as Nikita Mazepan, the Russian rookie driver, got a bit sideways there. But there are certain curves that you really can punch hard even in these conditions if you're confident enough and the car is well set up enough. So Ben Barnicoat then drove off into the distance, really. He got himself 5.5 seconds clear in the lead of the race. That was until the safety car came out. Callum Ilott, another fighting drive here, and more good points for Callum. Of his teammate Max Gunther to get second place. Significant overtaking manoeuvre. Fantastic move that. And Ben Barnicoat, despite some pressure from Nick Cassidy for the second half of the race, just cleared away again for the last 5 or 6 laps and controlled things for another Hi-Tech GP victory. Their second on the spin. So that's the story of the race. You can see the puddles as they make their way back through Parc Fermé. And here on this very special podium at Pau, we'll now get our drivers heading up to receive their first trophies of the weekend. So Paul Ricard first in overcast conditions and our second event of the season at the Hungaroring in mostly very hot conditions and then very wet conditions for race 3. And here at the moment for our third event of the season, our 7th race of the championship, it's a bit wet at Pau at the Hungaroring. It was very wet. I think it's probably been just as wet here. Certainly during qualifying yesterday, it was pretty torrential. So our drivers making their way up into the podium. There is Ben Barnicoat. There is Nick Cassidy for the Prema Power Team. And there is Max Gunther, his Prema Power Team teammate, the championship leader, coming into this weekend. And we'll now have the national anthem of our winning driver. Plus, of course, there is our winning team, Hi-Tech GP. So the British national anthem, God Save the Queen, reigns out over Pau. And now we'll have our trophies presented. We've got Marc Boudin, who's the Director of Communication of Total, to present the race-winning trophy to Ben Barnicoat. First race of the weekend here, his second win of the season. We'll have Eric Sobat, who's the sports event manager of the City of Pau, to present the winning team trophy to Hi-Tech GP. And then Marc Boudin will present our second place trophy to add to his collection of trophies. That's his 4th second place finish of the year for Nick Cassidy. That'll put him back up in the fight for the championship though. And Eric Sobat will present the 3rd place trophy to Max Gunther, who will savour that and will hope to just pick up some more points during the course of the weekend if he possibly can. So the drivers will now pose for a few photographs. Pretty happy. Probably a bit zoned out after that because they will have been in a tunnel of concentration, those drivers, throughout the course of that race. Every single 1/10 of a second of it. Mentally, extremely draining to drive around a street circuit, even more so in these wet conditions. And also, of course, they know that this is just part of the job done. Great to be up there, but they've got more work to do. So they're still going to go for the champagne though. Hopefully they've got spare race suits rather than driving in sticky overalls for the second race this afternoon. Ben Barnicoat and Hi-Tech GP celebrate with each other in style, and you can just see what great teamwork it is between driver and team. Having a great relationship is really important. There's the view to the first corner, Lagarde. And so we didn't really get too much rain during the race itself, but the spray was pretty bad. It got less and less so as the race went on. A swig of bubbly for Ben Barnicoat. And we'll clear the podium and then have a separate podium for the rookie classification presented by Sonax. The top 3 rookies. So Ben's going to be back on the podium in a second or so. as the winner of the race and the winner of the rookies. Guan Yu Zhu, who finished just outside the main points in 11th place, was the second best rookie. And here in his home country, Antoine Hubert is going to be on the podium as the third best rookie. Somebody that's going to be a bit higher up the grid for the second race this afternoon. George Russell will be on pole position for that one for Hi-Tech GP. Callum Ilot's going to be second on the grid for this afternoon's second race. Sergio Sede-Camara, the Brazilian, will be third. Lance Stroll's going to be fourth on the grid. Alessio Lorandi, fifth on the grid. Then Nick Cassidy, Ralph Aron, Mikkel Jensen, Ben Barnicoat, ninth on the grid for the next race. And Antoine Hubert, 10th on the grid. So that's the way they'll shape up for this afternoon's race. And then again, a very different grid based on second fastest lap times for the Pau GP tomorrow, which we'll see Alessio Lorandi, who's only fifth on the grid from the same session with his fastest lap time for race 2. Because he was very consistent, he's the one that's just going to nick through to be on pole position on Sunday's race and looking for his first win in Formula 3. In fact, his first win in cars, because he's another one that came straight from karting directly into cars and into Formula 3 racing. There you can see the city of Pau up above, and lots of stalls and music and real big crowds gathered up there to watch the racing. Certainly, if the sun comes back tomorrow, it'll be absolutely packed on those balconies. It certainly was last year. But you have to be a pretty brave and ardent motorsport fan to come out in these conditions so far this weekend. It is at least quite warm. So the podium has been reset, ready to go for our rookie podium before we wrap up our coverage of the 7th race of the season in the FIA European Formula 3 Championship. And poor old presentation girls looking a little bit soggy, but still smiling, which is good to see. And just waiting for our drivers to hop back out. We'll have Eric Reverby to present the trophy to our race winner, who's the Senior Vice President of Total. Mr. De Stamper, who's the President of CCI Pau Bien Race Club, is going to be presenting some trophies as well. So back you come, Ben, back on the podium again. I suppose you could say it's his fourth top step on the bands, because as the winner overall of the last 2 races and the winner of the rookies, that's 4 top steps to the podiums on the bands that he's had now. There's Guan Yu Zhu to the left of the picture, backed by Ferrari, second best rookie, and Antoine Hubert, the third best rookie, alongside as we get our race winners' national anthem.
Merci beaucoup. Applaudissements, s'il vous plaît, pour ce podium des rookies.
So another round of applause for Ben Barnicoat, who is about to pick up some more silverware, this time the rookie winners champion, as I say, from Eric Reverbery, the Senior Vice President of Total. More smiles, more silverware. Going to have to build some more shelves in the Barnicoat household to get these trophies in the living room somewhere. Mr. De Stamper, the president of the local racing club here at Pau, presents the trophy to Guan Yu Zhu, who will be fairly satisfied. He's the sort of driver that's already wanting to get on the podium again, though, and he's already done that a couple of times this season. So he'll be disappointed not to be in the points, but at least consolation, another trophy, and more good points towards the rookie standings for Guan Yu Zhu, runner-up in last year's Italian Formula 4 Championship, and Antoine Hubert there, one of the Van Amersfoort racing drivers. So it's Hi-Tech GP, Prema, and VAR that the 3 teams represented there on the rookie podium here at Pau. They'll then put down the trophies. Ben Barnicoat's already got a head start in terms of knowing how to crack the bubbly open. But this time they're going to save it and not get quite so soggy. So the podium is cleared here at Pau, the first race of 3 this weekend. And there is an update on the championship standings. Max Gunther, for now, leads the points. He's got 85. Nick Cassidy, 74, back up to second place in the championship. Lance Stroll down to third on 68. Ben Barnicoat from 7th has gone up to 4th place in the championship on 65 points off the back of his second win of the season. And then we have Joel Eriksson, Ralph Aron down to 5th, and 6th Guan Yu Zhu just back there in 7th place in the championship standings. So Max Gunther leads for now, but he's going to do well to pick up any more points this weekend from where he is on the grid. We'll see what plays out and what the conditions are going to be like for the second race later on this afternoon. We've got the Pau GP coming up tomorrow, of course. But that just about wraps up our coverage from the first race of the weekend. From me, Chris Hartley, and the team here at Pau. Hope you enjoyed the race. There's plenty more excitement to come here in France, and we'll leave you with a few highlights from our first race here this weekend. From me and the team, thanks for watching, and bye for now.